Hi everyone, welcome to Writer of the Week. Today we are here with Sweta Vikram, author of Louisiana Catch. Welcome Sweta, how are you today?
Hi, Melissa, and hello to everyone tuning in. I am so excited to be here. Like I was telling Melissa, I've had a bit of a rough subway day today, but I am excited to be talking to you. So grateful to be here.
So what was the catalyst that made you want to write the book, and when did that happen?
I want to say this was about maybe, the ideas were there for some time, and then I started to put them on paper. So there was a gap between those two. I want to say the whole process was about 6.5 years. So the idea started to come to me maybe about, I want to say 2011 or so. As writers, we spend a lot of time online. And, I've met some really good people who showed up to my London book launch just because, we were connected on Twitter. But I've also met some sort of sketchy people where, what they say and who they are, there's a bit of a disconnect. So I was thinking about it, and then I started to talk to writer friends, and they were like, oh, they're not just sketchy people. We were catfish. So it was like a different degree. I was like, really? And then, there was a lot of shame. So the one good thing that has happened between when I started to work on this book and now is the shame factor is coming down, because if you are online, in all probability, a degree might differ. Like, you've been fooled once by someone pretending to be who they are. So there were more like quiet conversations whisper, oh yeah, I've been catfished, because they knew I was working on this book. But now there are more open conversations. So that was a huge factor for me. Like, oh, we spend so much time online. Do we really know who we are talking to? And at the same time, there was a Batman movie that came out. I can't remember the name. And anyways, I went watch the movie because my husband and our friends wanted to watch it. And I didn't enjoy it. But that's because, I'm not much into superhero movies. I come back and I tweet something about my husband and our friends owe me a bucket of wine for wasting my time for this Batman movie. And I got some really nasty threats on Twitter. And a lot of these people didn't have a face. There was just a mask. So it didn't upset me. I mean, you were upset by people, like something like this, it can't be, at least it wasn't upsetting to me. It was just seemed so foolish. And I was like, oh, so we really don't know who there is behind that mask. And the mask allows people to be whoever they choose to be. So that idea was always there. And I've always written about multiculturalism and women's issues. So these nuggets of ideas were floating, and they came together as Louisiana Catch.
That's great. May I ask how writers have been catfished? That's interesting.
Oh,
I've never
yeah.
heard that before.
Yeah, so I'll give you one example. This one person told me that this other person reached out to them saying, okay, writers have for the most part frail egos, right? 10 people tell us how great you are. It's kind of a nice feeling, because just writing in itself by itself is full of challenges and rejections and insecurities. And then when someone who seems honest comes and tells you, I really believe in your work, would you like to collaborate? You do your homework, and this person had done a homework, and when I shouldn't disclose the gender, when they did look at this person's website, everything seemed genuine. But this person was faking a persona, had been following this, let's say person A is the victim and person B is the catfisher. So person B had done all the homework on person A to figure out what their likes and dislikes were, how they would get a conversation going. I mean, and you're out there in the ether. How do I reach out and say, hey, Melissa, can you interview? It doesn't. Like, I must have noticed something, right? And in this case, there's a writing connection. But imagine somewhere out there on Twitter, someone reaches out to you, or on Facebook, hey, can you interview me? So that's how it started. Oh, can we collaborate together? We can start this magazine. And that was the starting point, just knowing, paying attention. And that's why, my company, Nimi Life, which is a holistic wellness company, I tell my clients, be mindful about what you share, because you think you're putting it out here, but the information is literally out there. You have no control over who sees your information. So there are people, there are degenerate people who are looking for victims, who they're predators, who are looking for the next prey. And this person B figured out this person A was dealing with something, and they wanted to start their own journal and was looking for a partner. So that was an easy way in to then fake romance and say other stuff. So that was the way in. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
it's insane. When I've heard that, I was like, yeah. And after that, I've gone on to speak with a lot of, mostly, women talk about this, like men won't share as much. There's the gender stereotype and all of those things. But a lot of women have come and told me, and now it's come to a fact, they're like, you know what, if you're online, you're going to get catfished. And just recently, a therapist told me, like less than a week ago, that she was catfished, a therapist. They know all the check boxes. This is what they do, yet she got catfished. So
Wow,
it's very prevalent, unfortunately.
that's just crazy. The internet nowadays.
Right.
So, in the writing process, was there anything that surprised you along the way in writing the book?
So I have to tell you, my first novel that came out in India, that the whole process, from the time I wrote the book to the time it came out, it was 2 years or maybe less than that. This book was over 6 years, so it was a long drawn process. So it was very interesting to notice how the characters develop their own voice versus me. And with the first book, as the author, as the narrator, I kept telling the I kept telling the characters what to do. But in this case, it was like the characters had their own mind, and it would feel almost wrong. Like if I Ahana, who's the female protagonist, some of her responses, I'm like, girl, stop it, stop it. But like Ahana has her own mind. So the way she reacts to a situation would be very different from how I would react to a situation. So this is what surprised me, like to be true to the story, to be true to the characters really develop their own voice. And that was incredible to me.
How lovely. That sounds like so much fun.
It indeed was. You create this alternate reality and you start to live in it. And then you realize these people seem, I know it sounds crazy, but you're a writer and you can understand this. Like they start to feel like real people.
And what has your experience been with the method that you chose to publish?
So for this book in particular, I deliberately chose to go the non-agent route. I just had been burnt recently and one of my books died because agent change, not change, sign up, all of that was happening. And, I put in a lot of effort into that book and made the changes because the agent wanted it a certain way. And then all of a sudden, this person had a midlife crisis and changed careers. So my book was left with nothing and I couldn't recognize the book, right? So I'm like, okay, with Louisiana Catch, because it also has a very important social issue and social point of view. Me Too, and it resonates with Me Too. It just timing is coincidence. It wasn't, I couldn't have thought of this 6 years ago, that Me Too would become a thing. So I wanted to look for a press that understood my voice, that represented women's voices, that represented multicultural stories, and would, of course, they're editors and, the people who tell you right from wrong and who help you with the process. But I wanted to have some say in my book in terms of not just changing because it would sell a certain way. The story felt important to me. And I'd spent like 6 years is a long time. And it was just that. Doesn't mean I won't go back to the agent route. Just for this book around, I just felt I needed to sort of heal from my past experience. So I went the small press route. I sent in query and, I got an offer from Modern History Press.
And you went with which press?
Modern History.
Modern History. Okay.
Yeah. They're big supporters of women's voices and diverse voices. And for me, that was extremely important because the female protagonist is Indian, but the main protagonist and antagonist, the American men. So a press that understood the nuances and sensitivities of different cultures without trying to make everything a certain boilerplate way.
And what was your experience with their editors? Was it a good one, or how much did they change of your final manuscript?
No, so I at first hired a freelance editor, and I would be happy to recommend her to anyone who seeks that information. So I worked with her even before I'd reached out to the publishing house. And I'm like, I respect this editor a lot. She's got very good instincts. And then even after signing up with the publishing house, they had their whole in-house editor. So they didn't change my story much, aside from like a few things here and there to just make it more culturally sensitive. More than sensitive, I don't think it was sensitive. It was culturally relevant. Those were the spaces they changed. Otherwise, not really. My freelance editor made me do a lot more hard work, but it was well worth it.
And who are your readers, and what do you want them to have as a takeaway message about your book?
So, the readers have been very varied. Like, even though it falls under quote unquote women's fiction, I've had a lot of male readers and reviewers. So, people who like multicultural stories, people who, so this book is about friendship and romance and social issues, and there's a lot of wellness. So, modern day the contemporary stories about strong, independent women, flawed characters, but who end up empowering others. There's a very beautiful, subtle romance underlying the book. So it's for people who are accepting of diversity and inclusion and change and want to see the world become a better place. Because this book will fill you with hope. There will be times, like the female protagonist is a sexual assault survivor. So when we talk about that, it also makes you realize how shoddy humanity can be. But then when you read it to the end, and you realize how empowering our own pains and ache can be.
Sweta's book is available on Amazon, and if you want to find out more, you can go to her website, swetavikram.com. Thank you so much for being with us today, and we wish you a lot of success with the book.
Thank you so much, Melissa. This was a lot of fun.